Hi, my name is Alina, and I'm a member of the OAC Board of Directors. By training, I'm an epidemiologist and public health researcher. I'm here to talk to you today about how to read a scientific paper for the non-scientist. Well, why? A lot of us in this community are going to find ourselves face to face with a scientific paper at some point. As well, in order to form a well-educated opinion on a topic, we should do our homework, especially if we're going to comment about that online. Or maybe you would like to learn to decide for yourself the difference between good and bad science. And in order to do that, you have to start reading not just media articles about science, but also the actual scientific papers. They're also referred to as research articles. I'm not going to lie, it can be a bit tricky. Journal articles can be technical, long, and intimidating, but they don't have to be. With a few tips, a lot of practice, and some patience, you can be ripping through them with ease in no time. Reading a scientific article is different from reading other types of articles. There are many ways to approach this. I'm going to show you one, but typically, it's not suggested to read a scientific article as they are presented from beginning to end. That can be one, a huge waste of time, and two, in my opinion, extremely hard to follow. When I start reading a journal article, I will grab a sheet of paper to make notes on. 1 page per study, I limit it to that, and then I file those pages afterwards for quick references. So here we go. Here are my top 10 tips for reading scientific papers for the non-scientist. Tip number 1, look at the authors and their institutional affiliations. Those are usually listed at the very beginning of an article. Ask yourself, are the authors well published? Are they well known in their field? Is the institution well respected? Have you ever heard of it before? A quick Google search can often answer these things for you. Tip number 2 is skip the abstract. It's the short blurb or paragraph at the top of a journal article. Go straight to the introduction. But Alina, I love the abstract. It's so succinct. Okay, but here's the problem with that. The abstract is the author's interpretation of the research results, and reading that first can bias your interpretations of the results. So skip it for now. We'll come back to it at the end. Tip number 3, identify the overarching question the scientists are trying to answer. I'm not talking about the specific questions that they're targeting with the research, but how does this line of inquiry fit into the larger scientific field? Tip number 4, summarize the background. I will usually write down a few short sentences to summarize this section. I'll include things like what is known about this field of inquiry, what are the limitations in that knowledge base, what needs to be done next. This should provide you a good backgrounder as to why this specific research is important. Tip number 5, identify the specific question or questions addressed by this research. What are the hypotheses? Tip number 6, read the methods. How are the researchers going to do this study? I will normally scribble on my page. For me, that often looks like a bunch of little drawings of how the study's designed. I'm a visual thinker. Then I'll consider what type of approach they're taking. What kind of research design are they using? Is it qualitative or quantitative research? Maybe it includes both types of research. Is it carried out over a long period of time, or does it capture data at one moment in time? Tip number 7 is to read the results section. I will often jot down important bits of information from tables, graphs, and figures. If outside sources are cited, I will go take a look at those. Also, statistics can be scary for some, so here are a few important things to look for. Sample size. That is, did the study include a handful of test subjects or thousands of them? For some types of research, a small sample size is sufficient. But in general, the larger the sample size, the better. Significant or not significant. These words have statistical meaning. They basically mean that the research did or did not find something of note. Both outcomes can have important scientific implications, depending on the research questions posed. Graphs. Do they include error bars? For some studies, a lack of error bars, also known as confidence intervals, is very problematic. Causation and/or correlation. Those words mean very different things, and they have huge implications in research. Just remember, correlation does not imply causation. Just because two variables or factors in a study seem to have a relationship in some way, it does not mean that one is causing the other. Good science is very clear about that. I'll be doing another video about causation, correlation, and significance and non-significance in the future, so stay tuned for that. Tip number 8, do the results answer the specific questions posed by the research? Were the hypotheses correct? Spend some time here. You aren't going to get it right every time, especially if you're new at this. Practice makes perfect. Tip number 9, read the conclusion, discussion, and interpretation sections. Do you agree with how the scientists interpreted the results? What are the limitations of this research? Did they fail to mention some limitations? That is, have you found a possible loophole in their plot? What about the next steps? And tip number 10, now you have permission to read the abstract. Consider, does the abstract accurately capture what the authors say in the paper? Sometimes it doesn't. Okay, for those of you who have stuck around this long, I have a bonus tip. Tip number 11, what are others saying about the research paper? And by others, I mean other scientists in this particular scientific field. And also stakeholders. Were the stakeholders consulted in this research? Are any conflicts of interest listed? Again, a Google search here can be very helpful. So that's it. That's my top 11 tips for reading a research article. I hope this helps you get started or helps you approach research articles in a new and refreshing way. I'm always around for questions, so stay tuned for more helpful science videos right here at the OAC Facebook main page. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye! If you have any science questions or topics you'd like to see covered here at the OAC, leave a comment below.